which was, I'm just using the new names, which was originally Great Plains Software. They acquired SL, and they were predominant in the North America market. And then they had a lot of presence in a good presence in the other continents as well, obviously except Antarctica. And then Nav or Navision bought AX, and they had the predominant market in Europe, but had a good presence in all the other continents except Antarctica as well. And then Microsoft first acquired GP and immediately thereafter acquired Nav. And while they did that, they also built the Dynamics 365 CRM. Now, the question you ask, I almost put in an extra slide for that, but I opted not to do it. Because when they initially purchased all these, which was around 2001, they immediately started what they called Project Green. And you might hear people still laugh and make jokes about Project Green. But one of the things about Project Green was the idea that they would turn all of these into a single ERP system. There was a lot of resistance in the community, partly because each one is very good at something different. I mean, and I'm not just being nice. Each one has a really niche area. And so partners became very territorial about the products that they worked with, and there was a lot of resistance there. It's funny because I kept thinking and telling my partner, if they just change one little thing with every version, eventually they'll all be the same product. But I think, and this again is oversimplification by Belinda. Ideally, I think Microsoft would like to see, and I love GP immensely, and I have friends who love SL as much as I love GP. I think Microsoft would prefer if everything was a cloud-based system, which includes Nav. So everything going to either BC or F&O. But the reality is that's very, very difficult to do because they have very big bases of customers. It's a very big client base. As a matter of fact, I don't know if this is still true or not, but I know as of just as late as like 3 years ago, GP was bringing in a bigger revenue to Microsoft than the other products individually. So they can't just go through and willy-nilly say, you have to go to BC, because if they did that, a lot of people would leave and they would lose out on revenue and they'd lose out on market share. So it's been a very difficult road for Microsoft, that fighting and that resistance that people had. It went beyond partners and went into customer bases as well. And there is probably always going to be some customers that always want / and or need to have their data on premise, especially in the US, we have something called HIPAA, which is a privacy act for health information or employee information. So especially health information. If you go to the doctor, I remember one time I went for a doctor for a regular exam, and we'll just say it was like a throat culture, and they didn't get enough of what they needed to do to culture. So the nurse called me up and said, we need you to come back and take this exam again. And I'm like, why? And she's like, I can't tell you because of HIPAA. And I was the patient. So there's some very interesting privacy rules that require a lot of people to do that. One customer I worked with for many years, for the actors here in the US, one of their unions, I worked with their HR department, and they would never take their database to the cloud because of privacy of their members. So I don't know how Microsoft is going to deal with that. I know that they pulled back Project Green and said, nope, not going to do it. But I know they're actively making an effort to try to get people to, I'm not going to say upgrade because it's not necessarily an upgrade, but migrate or transition to BC. And if you try to cross any of these ERP systems with another one, no matter which one you pick, for some people it will be an upgrade, for some people it will be a downgrade, for most people it will be a lateral move. And so it's, they have to figure out all of that. So I really don't have a good answer for you, except that Microsoft did make an initial stab at it. Personally, I think they were a little too aggressive to begin with. but now they're just kind of holding. So they still have a small development team for GP and SL that work on new features, upgrades, keeping it current, keeping it running on new machines, paying attention to current tax laws. But I don't know, honestly, what is going to end up being the ending result or where it's going to end up. I know I am migrating myself from being a GP person to a BC person, but primarily it's because I work with the Power Platform. And just by virtue of it being in the cloud, it's just a lot easier for me to deal with BC data. And that's why I'm making that move personally. Besides that, it's like a new shiny toy for me. So I'm excited about that. It's like having an old beat up bicycle that was just awesome and that you've ridden for years and you love and you love and you love and you know every little rust spot on it, but now all of a sudden you got a shiny red bike and you want to play with it. So maybe it doesn't go as fast, but you still want to play with it. Okay, so on to the next slide. So that brings Microsoft in. This is my weird sense of humor, and this is not a Microsoft slide, but Microsoft, by getting all of those products together, they're by far the leader in the ERP space. So they have this world domination over debits and credits. So this is my little joke. Sorry, I have a weird sense of humor. Okay, so that was a little bit of the background where I added a little more to Julia. Now I want to talk specifically about BC, because what is BC? And I'm going to get into a little bit of the difference between BC and F&O specifically as we move on this journey. So it's an accounting application. It's in the cloud, and it is basically geared to marketed to small and medium businesses. So let's take a look at each one of these. So when it comes to business, the business applications, there are two flavors of it. One of them is Essentials, which covers financial management, sales information, purchasing, warehouse management, which I tend to think of as going back to my GP roots, like that's inventory, it has distribution built into it. It does have some CRM capabilities in it. I mentioned that they're very lightweight, some HRM and projects. So a little bit of human resources, a little bit of project management. There's a premium version as well, and it includes everything in Business Central, but it adds manufacturing and service as well. So like kind of like a field service scenario. So this is what the application pieces are that are in BC. Now, as far as software as a service, we all know what that is. You can access it from virtually any browser, from virtually any device. And I always joke that if your fingers are small enough and your eyes are good enough, you can operate BC from your phone. Same is true with F&O. Wouldn't want to do it, but you could. And the upgrades are included in the monthly licensing, which makes it less expensive to manage. And a lot of people have a hard time relating the fact that a cloud application, a software as a service application, can be less than purchasing a license in the traditional sense and then paying an annual enhancement plan. But if you think about it, you have to put that server someplace where it's protected. So usually you have your own server room. You have to cool it better, so you have that extra air conditioning, so you have that extra space that you're paying, that extra air condition, and then you have a team to manage it. So when you factor in just those things alone, plus the insurance on top of it, then the fee to pay someone to come in and upgrade your data, all of those factors come into play. And a software as a service really does work out to be a much less expensive solution, even though you got that bill coming to you every single month. Now I want to address the small and medium-sized business, and this is where we can talk about a little bit of the difference between this and the F&O that Julia talked about last time. And I'm lumping small business and medium business together. So I'm going to say less than 1,000 employees is typically one of the ways you would define a small business, a SMB business. And it's certainly not a small business, it's less than 10 employees. But a SMB business will typically have 1,000 or less employees, and they'll typically have less than $1 billion in annual revenue. Now, I said typically, so we'll talk about that in a moment, but you see the asterisk next to it, and the asterisk is an indication that I got these numbers or this criteria from the Gartner Group. The Gartner Group is an independent research company here in the US, and they do a lot of evaluations of different software applications. One of them, if you're a Power BI person, we're all familiar with the Gartner Group and their Magic Quadrant for Power BI, but they do a lot of analysis, and this is how they define small business. Now, I also want to add in the non-complex process. And the reason why I want to add in the non-complex process is over the years, and I mentioned this already, but I started working with ERP systems almost 30 years ago. And one of the things, particularly when we had our business in New York, we were in New York City for many years, we took more people off of QuickBooks. I think QuickBooks is international enough that you guys probably heard of it, should have it probably. We took more people off QuickBooks than any other application, which is an entry-level accounting system, a small business accounting system. After that, we took people off tier 1 software, so Oracle, SAP, PeopleSoft. That was the next group. I grouped them all together, but we took more people off of that. And they were typically people who had non-complex business processes. They might have had over $1 billion in revenues. Quite a few of them did, but we took them off something that had non-complex or something very complex and expensive to manage, but their processes didn't require that kind of complexity. So we took them off that as well. So sometimes people will be lured into the SMB market just by simply the fact that it's a much less expensive to manage if you don't have a complex solution that requires that. And even for a lot of them, they found, the ones that we brought in, one of the things they found was they liked working with consultants who had a broader experience of knowledge. When you get into some of those tier 1s, because things are so powerful and complex, people specialize in things. So you might have someone who specializes in AP. Well, if you have that person sitting there and you want to ask them some questions about the bank account, then they might not be able to answer that. They might have to bring in another person. So they one of the things that I found is people like having someone with a broader sense of the modules within the organization. Not that either way is good or bad. Okay, let's get into our first demo. Stop my slide for a moment and pull up, not yet. Okay, pull up this. All right, so I want to show you just a little bit about BC, and I'm only going to hit a few high spots because I really do want to show you the Power Platform integration to this as well. So, and BC looks very, very similar, you'll find, to what Julia showed us in F&O. And you just ignore my logo up here. I have my logo put in my Office 365, so my logo now appears on the bar as well. And the colors are a little bit different on the bar because of the way I have my Office 365 set up. So we have in here a variety of things, including tiles, and these could be set up by roles. So you could set up a role as to what people see and what they don't see. And of course, these are all customizable as well. So you could customize the way you want to see certain pieces of information. We have some visuals that are built into the system, and you could utilize some of those visuals right there on the spot and tag through them. I clicked on this one and pulled up the customer that was being spotlighted on this particular visual. And then as I keep going down, I could see a favorite list. So I've got some favorite numbers over here. I've got a little mini trial balance. And then I even have a connection to my Power BI reports. And this is actually connected to Power BI, my service account on the web. So I could go through and select a different report if I'm so inclined. So I've got a lot of different reports out here. Let's see. I don't know. Let me try this. I don't know what's going to show up on the Not Your Daddy Financial. Oh, this was a user group I did. So I had this particular report right here. I don't know that that's a good one to show because that's all there is on that one. But you can see I can get, let me go back to that sales file. So any report that's on there, and if you use bookmarks to create a navigation experience, it makes a really nice way to move around. So if I want to get to the report, I click on the report, and if I want to get to the home page, I click on the home icon. So really nice, simple experience that you could look at and go through. And if you want to, You could simply put it into focus so you could see it a little bit bigger if you want. All right. And then, of course, we have this report box. So this is just a little tiny way that we navigate. It's very, very similar. We have actions set up here. We could even go through actions across the top. If I want to create a purchase order, there's other things I can do here as well. One of the things that I want to show you is the true integration we have with applications, the Office applications. So I'm going to pull up my email here in one particular folder. This is just a sample file, but we're going to pretend that it's not. So let's say this actually came from a Datum Corporation, which is one of my customers. And so if I look in here, I could see, oh, they wanted to get a quote, for example, on these two products that we sell, the swivel chair and the conference table. So there are things I could do. You notice I have a add-in up here on the right. So if I click on that, I want to go to Contact Insights. It's looking at their email and figuring out which of my contacts I am probably wanting to, that this would relate to. And here is my insight into my Business Central. So basically, even if I didn't have Business Central in my browser in the background, it would prompt me to log in if I didn't already have the credentials stored in. But here is information that is specific to this particular customer. And if I want to create a quote for this customer for these items, what I could do is just come up here and I'm going to click on New and then choose to create a new sales quote. Right now I have 3 out there. And then it's looking, it's like, okay, these are the tables that are found or information I found that relates as best I can to find. Artificial intelligence is doing this into what I want to do a quote for. And I don't know what the guest selection is. It thought it picked up something there as an item. So I'm going to select these 2 chair pieces. And then I'm going to go ahead. I could scroll over more and see the quantity, but I can see a little bit of it right there. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And when I do that, come on, okay. There we go. So basically I have this little quote that's popped up right here. And I could make changes to the quotes if I want. So for example, maybe I don't want 7 chairs for that table. I want 8. Actually, let me go in and let me pop out. That's probably easier. If I could pop out the window and edit it here. So I don't want 7 chairs, I want 8. And so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to just do a, go to the next line. And then I'm going to click on this ellipsis right here, now that I've got all that done. And I'm going to come in and say, all right, I want to send this quote by email. And so now what's happening is, verify the settings are correct. Oh, I got something missing. What am I missing? I shouldn't have changed the quantity. Keep in mind, I am new to this. All right, everything looks pretty good. So let's try it one more time. Click on here and then choose send by email. You cannot send, verify the email settings are correct. Oh, let me just close that back up and try it from over here again. And girl is kind of new at this. All right, so I think I got it. And did I get it? You know what? We will just do another sales quote. Oh yeah, I got it. I could tell I got it because a couple things happened. One of them I heard, I got a couple quotes actually because I had a little issue there. I heard the email come through that it was being sent. So, okay. And then now I have 5 ongoing quotes. And if I click, here are like the last 2 quotes that I did right here on the spot. And if I go back into Business Central and I go to customers and I look up that particular customer, then I could see my ongoing sales quotes right here. And one of them was, I've done it a couple times today, so forgive me for that. But Here is the quote that I did where I changed it to 8. And then looks like I sent a 0 quote out, as opposed to one that I did earlier where I didn't change it, and that one was 7. And then looks like I sent it out a 3rd quote with nothing on there. So that was a little bit of craziness for Belinda, but it actually created that integration automatically. It took me literally like all of a minute and a half to create the integration with Outlook. All I had to do was come in and do a search to find my particular window where I set up, assisted setup, and then I needed to find where I connect to Outlook. And so the easiest way to do that, I can see it right there, but I could also do a search and do a search for Outlook. And this is where I set up the configuration. I don't want to run it again, but basically I just said yes to create a business inbox and chose to set up a mailbox for myself. And automatically that's done. So if I get an email from one of my customers and it matches up, then I could create interactions between the two. And I could even sync up my contacts with my Outlook contacts, which is pretty cool. Now, the next thing I want to show you inside of BC is the next item on my agenda, and that has to do with web services. How do we communicate with BC, between BC and Power BI? How do we communicate between Power BI, PowerApps, and Flow? So there's a couple, or Power Automate. So there's a couple different ways. For Power BI, you're going to need to set up what's called a web services, and it is essentially an API. So you can create some custom things for the Power Apps and Power Automate, but it's easily done. So the easiest way to do it, and one of the things that I found a little bit frustrating is the lack of documentation until somebody showed me a trick on what table I was interested in looking at. So for example, if I pull up the customer table again, and maybe I want to see customer detail information, then if I do a Control Alt and F1, I get this page inspection, and it tells me what page I'm looking at, and even technically what table I'm looking at. And this page is something that I can create a web service for. So I have this customer card here. So let me show you that. So I'm going to just do a lookup and find the web services page. There it is. And these are all of our web services. So web services that I have already, they could be set up on pages and queries. There are some default ones out of the box because there are some 3 different apps in AppSource for PowerApps if you want to go in and connect to those in the service. But to create one, you would just simply go to New. And now I'm down here. I'm going to click on Page. And then if I wanted to, I'm going to do a lookup on the value here and just go to the full list. So 21 was customer card. There it is. So I know I can create a customer card one. And you could rename these web services if you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a 1450, which is purchase order. And I probably shouldn't have done it that way. Let me clear that out. And then go to the full list. So there's my purchase order one. Now this is also an out of the box one. So that's the name of the query. And I'm going to call this Power Platform Finance Group, UG. And then we'll call it PO, _PO. So I can get rid of that later. Now I could apply it to all my tenants in this environment, or I could apply it to just the specific one. And it's not saved until I click on save. So I'm just going to go up one level or to the one above it. And now you can see I have this API here. So this is something I could use to make connections, but I don't have to with Power BI. So let me go in, and there was a reason I showed you that. So that was only one web service that I created. And what I want to point out is some of the web services, like for example, if you're connecting to something in like a purchase order where you have header information and then you have line item information, and those typically are stored in 2 different tables or have 2 different queries, then some of those, in some cases, it'll automatically create that connection for you. So I want to show you that. So I'm going to come in, go to online services, and this is the better way to connect as opposed to using the API directly. So I've got that set up, and I'm going to click on connect. And of course, I'm not signed in. Okay, let me sign in real fast. Got all my aliases. All right, and connect. Okay, so it should pop up my navigation window. I'm going to select my environment. So you could have a sandbox environment if you want to. So I'll open up my environment, and then I'm going to open up this specific company. And if I were to type in like the PPF, so I could see that now. I only created the PO, but it also did a purchase line one for me because it knows that those two are related to each other. I'm just going to select the PO one because I'm going to show you my favorite feature. And I'll go into transform. And likewise, I'm going to show you my least favorite feature. The thing that makes me crazy, and I understand it makes a lot of nav people crazy. So when this comes up, and of course it's on another screen. Okay, so here are my POs. I don't have a lot out there right now. I always have what I call Belinda's 3 rules. Rule number 1 in PO is you name it something that makes sense. So I'm going to call this purchase orders. So the query makes sense to whoever's using it. The second one rule of Belinda's 3 rules is you go to choose columns and you pick and choose the columns that you want. Now here is my least favorite thing. Anywhere where they have like number for an ID number, and for like here, we can see the customer number, it's no. Everywhere you see that occurrence, it'll have no. So you've got to go through and rename all those, or you're going to have no, no.1, no.2, and you're not going to know which one is which. So there's my vendor information. I've got my document number here would be PO number. I've got my document. Let me just get the posting date. And then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. And now I have a link to that line item. So I can connect to that link. I could also, because I already have a web service for the purchaser code, I could connect to that as well. And so now it's like I did a merge where I only had to go into one place though. So let me start with the purchaser. I'm going to come in and say, I just want the name. And I'm not using, this is also for commission or for salespeople as well. So I just want the name. So I'm going to click on that. And I should not have put in, looks like none of those have a purchaser. I should not have put in the link there, the beginning link. Okay. And then now I'm going to expand on the line item. So I'm going to go from 7 rows to however many rows I have. Now I don't need to repeat the type and the document number, but I'll get the line number, the type here, number again, which is going to be item number. And then I'm going to go through and get quantity. And then I'll get unit of measure, and then how about unit price? We'll just get those. And I'll click OK. And again, I think I did not unmark that. So let me just put line in front of this. So now I've gone from 7. You could see the expansion has gone to 12 because a couple of them have multiple lines. So that's one of my favorite features about that. But now you've got these numbers that you have to contend with. So you would need to make those like PO number, and then this one would be item number. And my third rule, in case you're wondering, of Belinda's 3 rule is you make sure the data type is correct for everything. Sometimes that means going above where you removed unnecessary columns, but now we only have 12 columns, and that is the data connection. So I'm not going to go through and build a report out for the sake of time, but I wanted to show you that. I love the way you connect there. I love the way that the links connect and so forth. So now I have my fields here, and we'll just do something very, very simple and populate pretty much everything in there. Why not? Just for the heck of it. Okay. So there's our visual. We're going to pretend it was spectacular. Woo! All right. So we've got Power BI's set. Now what I'd like to do is come back over, and I want to show you a couple more things. So I have created this flow. There are a lot of flow templates that are automatically out there. So I'm going to go to templates, for example, and look up Business Central. And a lot of approval ones that are built out here automatically. So you could see you can connect and create a flow approval using Power Automate. And the cool thing is about that is you could really extend it. And I love that you can connect to somebody in to do approvals that doesn't have access to the accounting system. So they can't get into a BC, but they can still be part of the approval process. And you can get incredibly granular if you want to with parallel approvals, sequential approvals, like if it's less than 500, Belinda can approve it. Otherwise, it's got to go to Julia. Otherwise, or Rishi. And then if Rishi's out, he could forward it to Chris and let Chris do it. So there's a lot of really cool things that we can do as far as that's concerned. We could even take advantage of knowing who the supervisor is of that person if you set it up in the exchange admin so that you could automatically connect to that. A lot of really cool things. You could add approvals when records are added, and this is a similar one. I did it manually, but I did it similar to this when a new item is created in Business Central. So what I did was I have a Microsoft list, that new feature list I've created, which is basically like a SharePoint list. I created this new customer checklist. And so when a new customer is added, then they get added to this checklist automatically. So that's one of the things that I added. And just to show you that flow, and we'll test it out in just a moment. Hopefully it'll have time to process. Things in Microsoft Office can take up to 15 minutes to do all the processing, but hopefully we'll be able to go in and see. So all this is I say, all right, when a customer record is created, so I'm going into that production environment, I'm going into the company. You saw me do that in Power BI, so you know that's the same. And then there are a certain number of records that are automatically exist for us to put in. Does not include everything. If you want to do something unique with like that purchase order, you would have to create a custom connector to be able to get that. That would be a whole nother session. It's not hard to do. You could do it with Postman pretty easy, but it would be something else entirely. Once that new record has been determined to be created, then it gets the row ID, the unique row ID in Business Central. It's not the customer number, it's the unique row ID for customers. Then once I get that, then I'm going in and I'm using the SharePoint connection for Microsoft List. And I'm saying, all right, populate the customer number and the customer to be displayed and leave the rest of the information blank. And so that's what this is doing. Okay, so this is the whole thing. So every time a customer gets added in Business Central, they're going to be automatically added to this list. Maybe somebody else manages this list. Maybe we put an email on there too to someone in the company that says, hey, Chris, you need to go through, a new customer's been added so that you could do research and evaluate the credit limit. We could even make it where the credit limit writes back if we want to. But what I want to do is show you an app, or actually we could just create a new app from scratch. Well, we don't have time to do that. So let me just open up the app. So I created this little app here just earlier to add a new customer. It's a very simple app. I did not do anything except to connect to existing data. It did all the work for me. I will show you the very few changes that I made to it. So while it's pulling up my app in progress.
Belinda, while that's going, do you want to answer a couple of questions?
Sure.
Sure. So we've got one on how do you determine whether to use BC workflow or Power Automate flows?
That's a good question. It really is going to depend upon your specific needs. With the BC workflows, they're going to need to have access to BC. So that's one differentiator right there is if you're going to be giving access to someone who does not have access to BC, you want them to be part of the approval process, then you would want to use Power Automate to make sure that that happens. So, and then also complexity. If you want other things to happen as a result, or if you want to really create a lot of steps involved, then that's when you're going to want to make sure that you use the approval inside of Power Automate. Good question.
Got it. Thanks. And another question about, because in the flow you were looking directly into the database. right? So
Yes.
they're
Yes.
wondering whether that has a performance impact on that database.
No. No.
Okay.
In this particular case, it's a trigger. It's not really looking. It's not inside the database. It's just a trigger waiting for some new record to happen. So no, it should not impact your database at all. Yeah.
Sure. That's good. There was Power BI reports embedded in BC, right?
Yes.
So does everyone need a Power BI Pro license then to view those reports, and they need access to the right workspaces? And
they would need I do not think they need access to a pro license, but they would only be able to see access to what they have in their workspace. So or what their default
so yeah, there must be a way of determining which reports show
yeah
up here, right?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. I'll
have
have to check that one out. Yeah, sure. That's a good question.
Are you able to increase the size of that pane, or is it always stuck at that?
Yeah, it's pretty small, isn't it? So if you wanted to make it bigger, let's see. I have not. Oh, first of all, let me get rid of my little queue over here. We should be able to, you can see we can go to next report. So you could toggle through all the reports. I don't think you can increase the size. Oh, expand report. Hello.
Oh,
there you go. You want to make it full screen? You can make it full screen. I just learned something new. Yay. Okay. That makes me happy. Okay, so in this, all I did was it creates, whenever you create an app with data, it creates 3 pages. One with a gallery that allows you to browse, one with a detail screen that displays the data that you've selected in the gallery, and one that allows you to enter something new. So on the gallery one, I did go in, let me select the gallery. Over on the right, I chose the layout. I changed it to just show title and subpage. And then, whoops, let me go back. I didn't mean to click off that. Then you could come in and tell it, I want to see, in this case, customer number, and the display name is the customer name. So those were connections that were already built in. I didn't have to do, again, if you want to do something unique that is beyond some preset ones, you would have to create that custom connector itself. And one of the reasons they do that is I have the ability to enter in a customer in PowerApps and let it show up in F&O. So I have this list here. If I want to add a new customer, I'll simply click on, let me go into preview like I'm running the app. I would click on the plus. And in this case, it's not auto numbering. So I'm just going to enter in my own unique number. And we'll enter Julia, the Queen of O. And then I'm going to leave the type blank, and I'm going to even leave the email blank. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the check mark to commit this. And now you should see somewhere in here, let me find Julia. Whoop, okay. I didn't change the search. So, oh, there, I saw it. I didn't have to go far. I probably would have needed to change the search. So here is Julia. Okay, so it's automatically set up type person. If I go to BC and I go to my customer list, there's Julia, the Queen of F&O. So now I have it all set for her. I could add her picture in if I wanted to. So now let's go back to the flow and let's see, fingers crossed, that it's going to run fast. And it did. It ran really quick for me 7 seconds ago. And if I click on this, I can actually see I completed all these steps. The first step, when it saw it was created, it didn't take any time at all. 1 second to retrieve it and 1 second to update my list. So I'm coming into my list. Here she is in my list. So if my job was to come into this list and update the credit limit with information like that, then I have it set here. And it all completely is integrated. Everything was integrated, and I didn't have to build anything at all. So this was all done very, very quickly. And I know that is a small inkling about what's going on, but It's pretty cool that from Outlook, you can perform certain actions using artificial intelligence to build in. You might need to do a little bit of edit and cleanup to make it happen, but that's certainly something that's available. You can see a little bit of Excel reports. So there's some Excel integration where you can enter and manage data in Excel. You could do that also in a lot of the applications, including CDS if you wanted to do it for CDS. But that is some of the information in a nutshell. And that just kind of brings me to my last slide, which is just my contact information. Were there, I know we're right at the ending time. Were there any more questions?
Not specifically. People have a think about some more questions now if you want. I mean, there was one about licensing, I guess. I think Fernando was asking us a joke about which version of Dynamics comes with the E3 license.
Licensing is something I tend to try to stay away from. But the cool thing is, let's say you have this whole concept of the customer here. Let me close this out. Let me just show you how quick and easy that was to add. So we'll add one in for vendors, let's say. Okay, so I'm gonna click on done and I'll click on new app. Actually, let me go from the home here. So I want to start from data. I'm going to click on other data source to find my other data. But the cool thing is, let's say you go to a trade show, and in the trade show you have someone who's entering in new customers or new prospects or new opportunities. You could literally create a Power App to do that and run it from the Power App. So you could easily run it from your iPad, and then you could have it update your CRM if you're not using the BC side of CRM, or if you use some add-on to CRM like MailChimp, you can have it automatically go to MailChimp as well. You could create a Microsoft form and let people fill out a form and have the form automatically update. With that, you would want to use Flow or Power Automate, but you can have the form automatically update BC as well. So let me grab customers here, and I'm going to connect. So there are set ones that you can connect to where there has CRUD, or not full CRUD, but read-write. And so you have some read-write capabilities that you could do from there. But if you want something that's done a little bit more complex, then you could just simply create that. All right, so here is my vendor list, and I went to gallery, and it automatically set for title, subtitle, and body. I'm just going to change that to title and subtitle. Actually, you know what? Let me keep title, subtitle, and body, and I'll come over to the edit fields. And for the title, I will leave that as number. I'll leave the display name in. And instead of getting an address, maybe I want to get their balance instead, so I could see the balance of the vendors that we have. Okay, so that's how easy that was done. And if I want to do a little bit of cleanup here, I could just come in and just shrink some of these things up. And this is really all the complexity of dealing with some of these apps. And right now the search is looking for number, display name, and that's good. I guess that's all we really need, the number and the display name. So if I want the balance though to look like a numerical one, I would just need to do a little bit of format to that. And oops, text. It's getting confused with text there. Okay, so text, and then I want it to be formatted like, forgive me for using $signs, US, pound, I want it to show commas, and I want it to show the decimal places, so I'll put in ending 0, and then an ending parenthesis, and now that shows up as a numerical number. And if I wanted to add a little more funk to it, which is something I like to do, I like to get rid of the arrow, and instead, when I'm in here, I like to come in and insert in a rectangle, and then I make my rectangle cover the whole space. And you guys are probably going, no, and you really should rename all this. So now what I'm going to do is reorder this and send it to the back so I can see the text before. Now that's a little too dark. So what I'm going to do on my rectangle is change the background. So this is how you change the functions if you guys have never played in PowerApps. So right now it's showing me, it shows the RGB color. So I'm just going to say if this item, and it is case sensitive, is selected, then the true value will be light. We'll choose light coral. I always choose the same ones. Otherwise, I'll use light blue, and I could put in hard code in those colors. So now I could see which one of these I have selected because the color changes. And I think that's a neater way to do it. I like it better personally than the arrow. So that's me building an app super fast. If you want to, you would then just go through and save it. But a lot of really cool things you can do. And the fact that it's in the cloud is extremely beneficial. And I will address one thing in licensing. So I am saying there are certain things that you could do in here where you wouldn't have to purchase a BC license. But you would still need access to certain pieces of information that you might need to have some form of BC license. I'm not a big licensing person. Maybe not some kind of full license, but like a read license. And you would need, in this case, a PowerApps license to be able to achieve this. So you need to think about all of the different licensing, but those would be less expensive ways than purchasing a full license for somebody. If that exists, talk to your partner about that one.
So it's not a premium connector though, is it?
It is a premium connector,
it is premium connector
to BC. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. For Power Automate and PowerApps, it is a premium connector, so you have to have a special version of those to be able to do those things. Yes.
Sure. And it doesn't work the other way around. So if you had a Dynamics BC or even FinOps license or something like that, that doesn't include you to create PowerApps and flows within that, does it? Or
I don't think so. Honestly, I don't know. I'm sorry. You would need to talk with your BC partner specifically, or hit me up with an email and I'll find out the answer. One of the things that I've learned over the years with Microsoft, and Rishi, you see the same emails I see in the MVP community. Licensing is always the longest threads of email, and by far. So I have made it a habit to just ask. It's like for every unique circumstance, let's ask.
Sure. And next session is with Chris Huntingford, right? So
yes.
Or let's put all our licensing questions to him, and he can.
Good point. And I would like everyone at the next session to give him grief. He was one of the people. I'm pretty sure it was him who was running it. A hackathon that I was part of, and we tied for first place, and they gave it to the other team. So I want everyone to give him grief because he didn't let Belinda win her first hackathon. So he's on my hackathons
with Chris has organized. So they've been great though. I mean,
it was great. I absolutely loved it.
The quality of things in a weekend was incredible.
Yes, they gave me credit for marketing because I was the only one really smack talking the other teams. But we had a cool solution that included a Power App as well. But yes, BC and F&O do offer an incredible amount of flexibility as far as integrating with other applications in the Microsoft family. And this, as you could see how easy this is. I mean, let me go in really quick and I will add a vendor, even though I haven't even saved this app. So I'll add, I don't know what numbers have been used, so I'm just going to make up one. Okay, so here is the new vendor, Rishi and Chris do UGs. I'm going to go ahead and click on that check mark, and now they're added right down here. And if I go into Business Central, and this app isn't even saved, I want to point that out. And if I come into my vendor list, there they are.
Nice.
Ta-da! I feel like I should lift my hands in there and go, hands off the keyboard. I know, right? That's pretty awesome.
That was quick as well. That was really quick.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yes, it was quick. And nothing, keep in mind, nothing is on my machine because I am working solely in Edge.
Cool. Just a quick question as well before we just to wrap up actually, and maybe Julia, maybe you can kind of answer as well. So just in terms of kind of FinOps and VC, how do you see that kind of functionality comparing? I know obviously it's kind of got slightly different audiences.
After this demo, I say just go BC.
that.
Your app connectors are so much better, and the Outlook thing as well. Oh my God, no.
Right?
I'll be out of a job if I say that, but your app connectors are so much better in Power Platform than the FinOps one. Oh, the FinOps one is rubbish in comparison now. I'm bright pissed. I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just they're so pretty.
Yes.
Yeah.
What they've done is really quite amazing. I don't really see Synops is the only way I would see it being part of the BC family is one, if someone was on-prem and they couldn't go off-prem, they had to stay on-prem. Maybe then you would do a connection where and actually I'm involved in a project that's doing that now, where they're using it for warehousing and managing it that way. But with the BC data, I guess it would depend on what you would want to, if you need warehousing beyond your production database, if you have complexity with a lot of other applications and you want to manage everything together in that warehousing environment, then by all means I would go Synapse. It would, because the fact that it's like a bring your own tool and use your favorite tool, I am stymied by Synapse. I mean, just stymied by it. It's so amazing. And
I could definitely see the need for kind of a data
How does
platform
BC handle like your multiple legal entities? Because I feel that might be where FinOps is a lot better. Is the multiple legal entities, the multiple currencies?
Actually, because it has that nav background to it, there are. Currencies are incredibly strong in BC. As far as I mean, if someone correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that was one of the things that, if you were to ask me, like I said earlier, every one of those ERP systems in the Dynamics family has something that it shines at. And GP, it's core financials. SL, it's project management. It's really good at jobs and project management. I always think of FinOps as being something that the flexibility of customizing is something that's quite amazing, and the fact that it could handle really large scale applications is another one. When it comes to BC, though, I always thought of it as being the best at handling multi-currency. So handling the different currencies is not an issue at all. And it does create each company separately, and you could switch them out and you could set up the currency that is available for that. You might have noticed that like some of the fields, particularly when I was in the purchase order in PO, it actually had a LCY for local currency, so that it would connect to the you could enter in whatever the local currency for that particular company or that particular database is. So yeah, that tends to not be a problem. I have not played with currency in it very much, but yeah, it should be pretty darn powerful for currency, because nav has always been something really powerful in currency. And I should point out that even though I gave you the things that I think each one of the products really shines in, that's not to say that other ones don't also really excel in that area, or that that's the only area they excel in. But those are my mind the things that, if I sold all the products and someone came to me and said, just forget cloud or on-prem I have projects, I would probably lead them to SL. If they said I had currency, I would probably lead them to BC. If they said we have really, things large scale and we need a lot of customization, I would lead them to FinOps. So it's a little bit, but that would be just based on that information alone. So obviously you have to really do a lot of digging to figure out what is the best scenario for all of them.
I'm just wondering, so some of the stuff, Julia, that you showed last time, with all those kind of different complexities of the accounting data and getting really into that detail. Can you do all of that with BC as well, or is there a limit on the kind of, you know, the accounts and the processes that you could do?
No, you could get you could certainly, there's no limit on like the number of accounts that you could have, or you could create dimensions for your chart of accounts, as many as you need. So at least I don't think there's a limit on dimensions. There's certainly not on chart of accounts. So yeah, no, there's no limits. Like I said, even though when I was defining what the SMB market is, there are a lot of companies that can afford, and by the definitions of the number of employees and the revenue, they would easily fit in FinOps. Maybe they have 10,000 employees and 2 billion in revenue, but they don't have a lot of the complex needs, so there's no need for them to go into something like FinOps. They could use something with a much simpler solution to it. And so, yeah, you're not limited by those kinds of categories at all. These are by no means entry-level applications. They're not a comparison to QuickBooks. They are an upgrade to QuickBooks.
Got you.
But I agree with you, Julia. Some of the coolness and the ease of how some of these things work, that's what is making me say, okay, my long old friend GP, you sit over there, because this is too cool. This is my new shiny red bike I got to play with.
Nice. Great. Has anyone got any other questions? Otherwise, we're a little bit over, so I think we'll wrap up there. Yep. Cool. Thanks so much, Belinda. It was really great to have you back again. I think we need to find an excuse to have you back yet again as well another time, definitely.
Always for you. Always for you.
We'll try to find another topic. So,
okay.
Sounds
I'll
good.
Keep my eye open for one too.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks everyone for joining. Sorry we ran a little bit over. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. So I'll post details of the one with Chris Huntingford in as soon as I get some details for you, and I'll put them up.